Hello and welcome to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director here at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. It's also a great pleasure to be joined here in the studio by Meg Hansen, who is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. She is running for the Republican nomination for the Lieutenant Governorship, which, as many of you know, has been in the news a lot lately. The incumbent Lieutenant Governor, David Zuckerman, has announced he's going to be running for the governorship, challenging incumbent Philip Scott. And also Timothy Ash, who's the President Pro Tem of the Vermont State Senate, has announced that he is going to be a candidate for the Democratic side for Lieutenant Governor. And I'm sure by the time we get to the election, there may be a few more names in the mix. But Meg, you're one of the first here on the Republican side to announce that you're throwing your hat in the ring for that. And so good luck and congratulations on that. And it's also good to have a Manchester resident who is interested in that statewide office. Meg Hansen is a former executive director for Vermonters for Healthcare Freedom and also is a current TV host and political commentator. She is the creator and host of the YCN, or Yankee Communication Network's, Dialogues with Meg Hansen, and has written also numerous commentaries that have been published in Vermont news outlets. Several of her shows have been broadcast here on GNAT, along with 10 other community access stations. So, Meg, again, great to have you with us. Thank you for making the time to be here. So, just to get us started here, the obvious question would be, what prompted you to decide at this point to take a stab at the statewide office of Lieutenant Governor?
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here. I moved to the Upper Valley, so that's just, the Windsor County area, about 10 years ago to go to grad school at Dartmouth College. And even, that's in Hanover, but I had an apartment, I was staying in Windsor. And so every day I would drive, it was about a 30-minute drive, I would drive to go to school. And we'd have to pass through downtown Windsor, which, I don't know if you've been there, but it's closed storefronts. It's completely dilapidated. I mean, we're seeing complete economic depression. And you see the sort of the shadow of what used to be a great, industrial center. It was a manufacturing hub, and now it's no more. So that had a very formative role in my thinking about how I want to, do something after I graduate. And so that was really sort of the trigger point, because, 2.5 years of that every day, understanding what's happening. So I applied for something called the Republican Leadership Initiative. It's a fellowship. You apply with the RNC, and I was selected as Vermont's first fellow. They didn't have a lot of applicants from Vermont, and I was connected with the Windsor County leadership, and so that's how I kind of got started in terms of sort of grassroots advocacy. And then I formed my own small communications firm, and with that I've been doing various policy and multimedia efforts for the last 5 years. One of them is this show that I did. I also was the executive director of a small health policy think tank, as you mentioned, Vermonters for Healthcare Freedom. I also worked with the House Republican Caucus, did a lot of communications with them. So I've been in the trenches for a long time, doing, whether it's volunteering with like the Veterans Shelter in Rutland, things like that. And so I think that in terms of moving the needle, we were able to accomplish a little bit, but I really felt that now it's time to really step into the arena and put your name on the ballot, put yourself out there, because that means you really care about what you're fighting for, what you believe is a future for Vermont. And the Lieutenant Governor's role is statewide, and I think that the issues that our campaign, Small Towns, Big Hearts, is our theme. That's not just about one district or one county, it's statewide, and it gives an opportunity to present a vision to Vermonters which is different from what we have right now in Montpelier, completely different. And so I just felt like now's the time to do it.
Now, will this be your first try for political office?
Yes, it's my first try.
All right, and you have an interesting background. Prior to your time at Dartmouth, you come from India originally. You've lived in several different countries.
Yes.
You've also had a career in healthcare.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about all of that, and how did you wind up in Vermont?
Yes, I was born in India, in central India. I left when I was 7 months. My mother's family immigrated to Dallas, Texas, and it's a little bit of a tragic story, and I know that it's kind of hard for me to put it out there, but my mother was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor in her brainstem when I was 5 years old. She was given 6 months to live. She ended up living for three and a half years, but it was very hard. My dad took her everywhere to get treatment, but you know, she didn't make it. But during that time, my maternal grandparents were guardians of me and my brother, and my grandmother especially. She loved America. She really instilled a great love for, and she'd always draw contrast from the Indian people and American people. And of course she was biased because they left India behind, but in terms of just a love for the founding fathers and for the Constitution and independence, you know, she would always say, because of the tragedy, that you're on your own, so you really have to cultivate a sense of self-reliance. And also, she loved God, so you know, faith is also a really important part. So this was a very formative experience for me, a very difficult, tragic one. But my father is a doctor. You know, he's a pediatrician, child specialist, and he's worked in the Middle East a lot during the Gulf War. He went to Jordan and worked in refugee camps. So as a result of that, I've had a chance to live in the Middle East as well with my father. And then, yes, so now this is already quite unique, I guess, but now here's where it gets unusual. So after I finished high school, my mother was a doctor as well. My mother really had a love for medicine. She specialized in internal medicine, and she loved research. And so it was sort of I was 18, so I just felt like I need to complete what my mother couldn't. And I also felt that maybe I should be a neurosurgeon so I can help other people like my mother who didn't have a way out. So I don't want to say it was naive, it was idealistic. And my father said, you know, we have a tradition of medicine in our family, so go to India and study medicine. The Indian system follows the British model, so that's different in the British Commonwealth. So you have to get good grades after high school, you go straight to medical school, and it's the same program. It's called MBBS, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, but when you come back to the US, it's equivalent to the MD. Of course, then you have to take the medical licensing exam and then do a residency and continue. So at the age of 18, I found myself in southwestern India, in a small village. The school is called Kasturba Medical College. It's a really good school. It's a good program, but I didn't know what I was signing up for, you know, and there I was born in India, but I didn't grow up there, so it was a really major cultural shock, and it was really rigorous as a program. After a little while, I didn't want to do it. I love writing, I love politics. This is kind of my area, but my dad said, you've got to finish what you start. And so I finished it. So I got my degree, but I said, okay, after that, I'm just going to now do what I want to do. And so it was sort of a leap of faith. But then that kind of took me to Italy and Norway, and where I was working. And then after that, to go to grad school, I came to Vermont. So it's kind of a long way, but it helped me develop my personal and political philosophy, living in all these places. I mean, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been able to do that.
Well, tell us a little bit about that political philosophy. What is the sort of the broad sweep of that? How would you describe where you stand?
F.A. Hayek's The Road to Serfdom. It's a very formative influence on me. He was an Austrian economics professor, and he basically did economics. But then he fled from Austria, you know, during that time to the UK, and he was very concerned that the British intellectual class was getting enamored with socialism or Marxism, and so he wrote this book dedicated to them, explaining to them how things had gone bad in Austria. And well, they called it central planning at that time, you know, sort of. So that's in that book. He just wrote it as, you know, sort of a little pamphlet, but it became, especially in the U.S., it became bestseller. There's a Reader's Digest version of it, and I've read both versions, and that had a really formative influence on me. So if you want to look at my political philosophy, it would fall within, in America, what is known as the conservative intellectual tradition. So a couple of people that, Barry Goldwater, for example, he's important. Ronald Reagan is really important. Margaret Thatcher are people that I've looked to and I've learned from.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at some of the issues then that are kind of on the radar screen of Vermont politics this year anyway. Many of them are hardy perennials that return over and over. But since you have a background in healthcare, I guess I'd be curious to know what you think the state should be doing perhaps to offer more and better health care to more people. I mean, certainly one of the issues that I'm hearing a lot about is the rising cost of health insurance premiums impacting school budgets and town budgets, and just seems like a lot going on there. So if you're elected lieutenant governor and have an opportunity to influence that discussion, what are some of the ideas you would be throwing out there on the healthcare front? That's
a really great question. I'm just going to give two lines to explain the overall philosophy of the campaign and why I'm running, and then I can get into healthcare because that kind of goes into that. So the idea, the reason why I'm running, especially for sort of high-profile position of lieutenant governor, is to give a new vision for what our future for Vermont can be. I don't think that this race is about left versus right. I believe it's about forward, the future versus the past or backward. That's how it is. So we have a lot of candidates, you said Tim Ash is one of them, who are running to continue or accelerate the status quo. Whereas I really believe that the moral path, I'm going to use terms of morality, the moral path for the people of Vermont is a future that is pro-prosperity and pro-freedom. And what do I mean by that? I mean that every Vermonter across all socioeconomic classes deserves the opportunity to build a life that is prosperous, that is meaningful, that he wants or she wants for himself and his or her family. And to do that, you need freedom. You need freedom in economic freedom, you need healthcare freedom, and education freedom. These three especially, because those are the three main pillars of our society. The state government is huge, largest employer, healthcare, and education. So especially in Vermont, we need these three freedoms. Healthcare freedom is a right. That's what I believe. The freedom to choose the healthcare or health insurance or actually whatever doctor or hospital that you think is best for yourself and your family. That is a right. That's what you need to do. So if that is your starting position, now let's look at actual policy positions. The first one is health insurance. I really want to be very clear. It's the 21st century and still people conflate healthcare and health insurance. They're not the same thing. So when we're talking about health insurance, let's talk about that. Vermont Health Connect, you know, the marketplace, we know that it's failed. It's a monopoly with Blue Cross Blue Shield and MVP. We know that it has some of the highest, I think top 3 highest premiums in the nation. That's just not working. That's just not working. But when we look at the office, the Healthcare Advocate Office or the administrators, Green Mountain Care Board, what I see is a desire to serve ideology, the ideology that created this system, as opposed to serving individuals. So why can't we make health insurance affordable? There are many ways to do that. One of them is to allow you to buy insurance plans outside this. Why are we trapped in this? We can't do that right now. Whatever you think about the Trump administration, last year and the year before, they passed a lot of regulations to make insurance more affordable, and that's helped Americans, but not Vermonters. Why? Because our state government prevented that. One of them is association health plans, short-term limited duration plans. We don't, or just allowing people to have catastrophic coverage. These are plans, these are ways to sort of exit this, let's think of it as a highway that's completely congested. You know, that's what Vermont Health Connect, we can't move anywhere. There are exit ramps that were provided or that we can have. But if you want to serve ideology, a lot of people have said, I think Mike Fisher has said that no, if we allow people to go, then you know, it'll fail. The premiums will go even higher. So if your idea is to somehow protect Vermont Health Connect and somehow help the exchange, you're not serving individuals and the insurance is not going to go down. So that's one.
Well, isn't there there also an argument to be made that you know, healthcare costs are rising for reasons which are kind of hard to fathom? Like, I mean, pharmaceutical companies seem to be part of the problem, at least from where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
They're charging more, and therefore that's driving premiums up. It's not a question so much of like a state-run premium, or a state-run office, so much as the fact that there are these costs that are bubbling up, driving these premiums up, that it's causing those premiums to go higher.
That's not true. I mean, definitely so when we talk about healthcare, it's not a free market. It's not. We know that. It's not because third-party payers control how we spend our healthcare dollars or how we buy things. What do I mean by that? That means we don't go and buy it, right? There's Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance through employers or VA. So someone else is using our dollars to make the healthcare purchases. That means it's not a free market. A free market would be that, you know, there are competitors, we go, there's price transparency, we see, oh, this is better than that, they compete, we buy what we want. So we're not following, so it's not a free market. I'm not saying that it is. So that's the first thing that we need to be clear. But there are many factors to it. It's not just one or the other. I'm talking about in Vermont, this makes it harder. You know, yes, absolutely. The drug prices are higher. They're making a lot of money. That's definitely true. But so is the fact that you've created a sort of a trap where people can't get out of it. I mean, if the idea was that you want to bring health insurance down, then everything is good. It's not just one or two, right? Then you would allow every avenue to flourish so that in every way it's, you know, we can bring the prices down. Speaking of which, though, I do want to talk about One Care Vermont and the all-payer system. That is also a reason why our prices are going really high. It's very complicated. People don't seem to understand what is happening. We do know, I mean, people might remember that, you know, Governor Shumlin tried single payer and failed. And then just before he left office, he signed a deal with then the Obama administration to try a new way of doing it. It's called the all-payer model, right? And so the basic idea, the reason why single payer failed is because the annual cost growth of the model, like how much it's growing, was more than the annual GDP of Vermont. So obviously, right, does that make sense? The cost is, so it broke. So so now with all payer, the same people, Green Mountain Care Board, you know, the same people in charge are desperate to show that there's cost containment, which means we're holding in, you know, we are reining in the prices. And with Vermonters for Healthcare Freedom, I led a year-long investigation into it, and I still continue to do that, even with the campaign. There's a lot of things, red flags. There are a lot of systemic problems. There's a lot of data manipulation. And the scary part is that we're seeing a rationing of healthcare taking place because they're so desperate to show that the costs aren't increasing, you know, that so many people are not. I mean, the usage of primary care physicians has gone down. Why? Why are lesser Vermonters seeing them? The usage of specialties have gone down. Why? I mean, it's not like everyone's healthier. It's not. It's just that they're desperate to show that we're holding the line when it comes to that, so that there's a new model, cost containment, so that this doesn't, you know, it doesn't break again. So again, that's ideology versus individuals, right? And the worst part is that this all-payer model, which is supposed to be run by the state government in association with CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, it's being managed by One Care Vermont, which is a private company. So what's really happening is that the UVM network, that's the main network, which has been buying up independent practices in the Northwest and is now going to come to our neck of the woods, is sort of funneling all the money that they can get through Medicaid, putting it through this opaque private company, because we don't know how much they're getting paid, and enriching themselves. It's $1 billion scam. Right now the budget is $1.42 billion. I feel it really is. So I'm just going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to stop. A government monopoly, okay, a government monopoly that is working through the facade of private company. What does that remind you of? What does that evoke?
Well, I'm sure you're thinking of some sort of large state bureaucracy that denies people different choices.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little more inflammatory. This was the German National Socialist model. But the Soviet communists had government monopoly everywhere. But this is where you're using a government monopoly, but you're funneling monies through a private company.
Okay, well, let's pivot to a couple of other things here. Carbon emissions are another issue that the legislature may be tackling in one way or another this coming session. There are two proposals kind of floating around through Montpelier, Transportation Climate Initiative and another proposal that would make the state's goals for reducing carbon emissions into actually something that's legally binding as opposed to just a nice idea. What are your thoughts on that issue? Do you think that the state should be, aggressively moving forward to try and reduce carbon emissions, or is that again something that should be left to, the free market or whatever?
No, I don't think that it's free market or whatever. I don't think that's fair. I think what I'm trying to do here is explain the underlying philosophy, and then we can get into policy proposals, because they're all derivative from a basic philosophy. And if you don't understand that, if the people don't understand that, then it becomes hard to have informed discussion and reasonable debate, right? So that's why I'm trying to sort of get into these ideas. And I think it's important to call a spade a spade. Sometimes you just have to do that. So about the whole climate change, I do believe mild climate change has been demonstrated, but catastrophic climate predictions are speculated, and that is by various computer models that aren't able to prove it. It's very easy to post-predict something, but you have to predict it. Make right predictions and say this is going to happen, and then it should happen. And those computer models have not done that. So that's as far as climate change is concerned. So it's not like it's not a problem, but the problem aspect is pollution. We don't want pollution. Nobody wants to stand for pollution, right? Now, when we actually get into these, like TCI, for example, or any of these policies, in order for me to explain that, I have to sort of expose, or I want to expose, what is the underlying basis of having these policy proposals. So the way that I see it is that you need an objective. What is the objective for any policy? For me, it is human flourishing. That means I want people to be free and to be able to choose and have prosperous lives that they want to live for themselves. That's, for me, the basis. So how do you do that? Well, very simple: economic growth, industrialization, manufacturing, expanding economic freedoms. This is how you do it. That's sort of the basis of it. And I understand that, and I acknowledge that in order for us, for human beings to thrive, not just survive, thrive, we need to impact the environment. We need to do that. We can't not do that. That's how we are here. I mean, the studio, we've impacted the environment, right? So we need to do that. And I don't demonize that. But on this side, when you look at the philosophy, and some of the really hardcore climate writers, activists are open about it, but I guess not in the legislature. There, the basic idea is that human impact is bad, okay? So the idea is that nature is pure and pristine. Human beings are polluter parasites, and that every time we change the environment, we do something, we're committing some kind of sin, and it's bad. So it's important to stop it. It's imperative is to stop it. So if that's your idea, if you're thinking that human beings are polluter parasites and human impact needs to be stopped, then you come up with things like TCI, which actually Senator Tim Ashe told Anne Galloway, the founder and editor of Vermont Digger, we need to think of different ways to get Vermonters out of their cars. And that's exactly right. Why? Why don't you want people to travel for long distances? Vermont is rural, for work. Because if your idea is, I don't want human beings to impact the environment, I don't want human beings to drive whatever car they want, then you go the climate way. But if your idea is human flourishing, human empowerment, as is mine, I'm pro-human, I'm team human, then it's about industrialization, it's about economic growth, it's about jobs, and that's the basic difference.
Okay, Time left for about one more question, and there's so many issues out there that we could probably easily talk for another half an hour to get through all of them. But one of the ones Governor Scott touched upon to some extent at his State of the State message last week was something he's talked about just about ever since he came into office 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, whatever it's been now at this point. And that's the demographic issue facing Vermont. We're an aging state. Second oldest, I believe, in the country. We're still behind Maine, barely.
Yes.
But clearly, that's a situation that, in the long term, is not going to be sustainable. The state has come up with a couple of programs: the State of Stay and the State of Play, and all of that incentives to help people move here. Do you think those are good ideas, or moving us in the right direction, or what more should the state be doing to try and bring more folks to Vermont to be permanent residents?
This is actually the #1 reason why I'm running. There are very few voices under the age of 40 or under 35, like myself, that are in the public sphere talking about it. I'm a millennial, and I know that I speak for my generation and those that will follow me. This Vermont is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for people like me. I want to be able to buy a house. I really want to be able to buy a house. I can't. I want to be able to afford to have children and raise them in Vermont. I can't. I want to be able to save money for retirement and live here in Vermont. I can't. The #1 reason is there are no upwardly mobile career options, because you don't just want a job, a minimum wage job, whether that's $15 or $20 an hour. You want the ability to have a career where you can actually grow, right? That's not available in Vermont. And if that's not available, then we have a problem. You can have all these little things like, oh, $10,000 to come here, $7,500 to come here. But if there is a fundamental change in the philosophy of Vermont government, if it's open for business, if it's pro-business, if it's pro-economic growth and economic freedoms, people will come here. They'll just come here on their own. So I think Art Wolf, who's a former UVM economics professor and now is an analyst, he said that we are experiencing an unusual rate of losing demographics. And the reason is people don't like to live in cold climates and people don't like to live in small towns. I can't think of anything more ridiculous, I'm sorry. Because when you look at the top 5 states to which people are going, Alaska, North Dakota, and Idaho are part of them. They're all cold and they all have small towns, right? It's not about that. People love small towns, love rural communities. There's a lot to love, and Vermont is so beautiful. People would love to come here. Young people come to Dartmouth and they want to stay. Young people come to UVM and they want to stay. You know, after they study, they want to stay, like me and my husband. But if you don't have an opportunity to have a career, then how can you ever stay here? So how do we combat that? You combat that by changing the fundamental philosophy of the legislature and the bureaucratic class. And that's what I'm running for, to advocate for a systemic reform, complete reform, and a fundamental shift in the way that the state is governed. So it's not about ideology or pushing different agendas. So we see they want to legalize prostitution, for example. That's one of the bills that's been introduced that people are talking about. Or even tax and regulate marijuana, because that's going to increase revenue. How are these actually helping people do well in life? How are you giving people an opportunity to have prosperity? People talk about affordability crisis. So, you know, a lot of I think that we have an accountability crisis, a major accountability crisis in government, where the bureaucrats and the majority legislatures are not accountable to the public. We know about the women's prison scandal that happened recently, horrible drug abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, how is that okay? Today, in 21st century Vermont, Vermont positions itself as the most progressive state. But this is happening. Unfortunately, Governor Phil Scott didn't even mention it during the State of the State address. And T.J. Donovan, who was there in the audience, I was there, I attended it. The report said that, you know, he was informed about it, but, you know, he did nothing about it. That's an accountability crisis. The One Care Vermont thing that I went on and on about, I'm very passionate about that issue. There's no accountability to the people for that. that when we look at education spending, the mechanism that we have with the local authorities and the state authorities pointing fingers at one another, and there's no accountability for how the dollars are being spent. We've seen that this year, there was a report recently that Vermont spends a maximum about $20,000 per student. That national average is $12,000, but we don't have student outcomes to match that. Where's the accountability for that? So we have a major accountability crisis that's hurting young people, definitely, everybody, but young people. And the second thing I say is, why are we talking about affordability when we should be talking about prosperity? Why are we just trying ways to somehow get by instead of trying to thrive and flourish? Coming back to the human flourishing aspect, because that's not what the basic priority is. If the priority was to allow people to grow and expand and let small business owners flourish and invite industry, if that was the case, then people would come and there wouldn't be a demographic crisis.
All right. Well, there's a whole lot we could talk about just on that subject alone. Because I'm sure that the governor and his team are thinking we're doing everything we possibly can to incentivize people to come. But it's a very difficult problem, and it's one that's obviously, as you well know, not limited just to Vermont. There are a lot of rural states around the country that are experiencing the same problems, where younger folks are leaving to go to urban areas and.
But some rural states are seeing an influx, like in North Dakota, Idaho, and Alaska. So it's not just about rural, and that's just a very common narrative that we hear. It's about the economy. In states where the economy is good and where there are jobs, people go, whether it's rural or urban. A lot of urban areas, like Detroit, for example, are also losing a lot of population.
True.
So.
Anyway, well, again, much more we could talk about, and maybe we'll have another opportunity later on. The filing deadline is May 28th, in case any of you out there might want to also think about running for state office. The primary for the lieutenant governorship will be held on August 11th, and of course the election on November 3rd.
Yeah.
So, to be continued.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I really appreciate you being here with us today and sharing some of your views with us and the viewers, and hope you all found it interesting and informative. And we'll see you again the next time. Have a great day.